What's going on, everybody, and welcome back to the Sports Nerds Podcast. I'm Brock Byrne alongside with my boy Dawson Livingston, and another fun weekend of the NFL has passed. And honestly, I'm not even talking about the games itself. This morning, we're recording here on a Tuesday night. This morning, we got some big news in the world of the NFL involving trades, and we'll get into as well as recap last week's games and also our rankings in the NFL. I'm going to hop off real quick, Dawson. I'll put up the Jets graphic real quick. Obviously, the big news in the day of Davante Adams going to the Jets, and you can start giving your breakdown. But I'll be back on here in a couple seconds.
Yeah, big news of the day is Davante Adams he's finally a Jet. It's been talked about for the last few months, ever since Rodgers really got over to New York, and yeah, it happened. The final details of the trade: it's Jets receive Pro Bowl wide receiver Davante Adams in exchange for a conditional 2025 third-round pick that can convey to a second-round pick if Davante is either an All-Pro or is in the AFC title game or Super Bowl. Huge news for the Jets. I think they have to still pay quite a bit of his contract for this year, but I think the Jets were they were going to be able to afford that, which is good for the Jets and Davante. But yeah, they needed this after starting the season 2-4.
And I'm not going to lie, I heard probably the latter half of what you were saying, but I agree. I'm assuming you're saying this is a huge move and a great move for the Jets. Obviously, they're in desperation mode, losing their head coach last week. I thought they were going to win this week because it seems like most of the time when coaches get fired, the teams usually pull out a win. Lost by 3 against the Bills, 23-20. But after that game, I was like, oh, it's pretty much over. The Aaron Rodgers experiment there in New York is pretty much got its final nail in the coffin. And then you wake up and all of a sudden you're like, oh yeah, Davante Adams is in New York. Oh, okay. I don't know how much you said about their future really with this season. I mean, they're now 2-4, and the Bills, also 2-2 in the 4-2. So divisional rival, lost that head to head. But their season's not completely over. But I'm not gonna lie, it's still gonna take a lot to bounce back here.
Right, and I agree. But the one thing I will say for optimistic Jets fans out there is their schedule, I like to believe, lightens up a little bit. You have a game this Sunday night against Pittsburgh, which is going to be a huge game. It's going to be Davante's first game back, followed by at the Patriots, which, with how the Patriots have been looking this year, that should be a win. You got a tough game on the 31st against Houston. Houston's no rollover team. They're one of the better teams in the league. Then you have Arizona, followed by the Colts, and then Seattle. So like,
and Arizona's a flip a coin team this year.
Right. Arizona can look like they can go beat San Fran, or they can just absolutely lay an egg against Green Bay. So if you're the Jets, I feel like this would be the time for you really to turn your season around, where you could be sitting maybe by the trade deadline, like, oh, let me do the math on that, 5-4, but we got all the momentum in the world right now. We're on a 3 or 4 game winning streak. So if you're the Jets, great move. I don't know if it's going to put them into Super Bowl contention for me, but it's still a great move nevertheless.
Yeah, it's one of those things where it's like they needed to do something because Aaron Rodgers, his days are numbered in the NFL, whether people want to admit it or not. So it's kind of one of those things where they had to do something because they know that Aaron Rodgers at some point is going to retire sooner rather than later. And who knows, next year might be his last year. This year might be his last year. 3 years from now, maybe. I don't know. 3 years seems like a push, but he's not playing terrible, honestly. He had 294 yards last night against Buffalo and 2 touchdowns. What also, by the way, another freaking Hail Mary by Aaron Rodgers being completed, this time to Allen Lazard. I don't get how he is able to do it. And you can be like, well, it's his receivers. No, he's done it with so many different receivers. That's the thing, that Rodgers has been able to put it in the right spot for them. He is the king of Hail Marys in football.
Oh, for sure. The ones I can remember off the top of my head is the one against Detroit that everyone thinks about, him throwing it to, I think, Richard Rodgers. I think it was a tight end.
Mm-hmm.
The one that I think goes under the radar was sorry, Brock, I hate to bring this up to you, but Packers Cardinals, when he throws it up to Jeff Janis, I think from 50 or 60 yards out.
I
That
mean,
was the Larry Fitz, Carson
yeah, I
Palmer.
was gonna say, I mean, Fitz basically didn't even give him a chance in overtime, so it didn't matter.
Yeah, that's true. That's true.
But no, it's gonna take a lot, and especially with the Bills. I really think the Bills are actually a decent team this year, and we'll see what they're able to do here as we get more and more into the season. Other big news from this past weekend, the 49ers able to get a bounce back win against the Seattle Seahawks, which you may be like, well, why does that game really matter? Well, it does in terms of the division, because that division is kind of a hot mess. And anytime you can get a divisional win in the NFC West at this point, it's huge. And so the 49ers get that head-to-head win against Seattle, 36-24 at Seattle. So that's even a bigger win. San Francisco gets another running back to have a really good game. I don't even really know how to pronounce his last name. I'm not going to lie. Do you know how to pronounce
It's Isaac. Oh man, it starts with a
Garendo?
G. Yeah, Garendo.
Garendo.
4th-round rookie out of Louisville this year.
10 carries, 99 yards. Another just running back that they can just plug and play with this team. That's just really what they do. Their record doesn't reflect how good this team really is. They've had some tough losses. Of course, the Cardinals one is probably the worst one on the year, and it may bite them in the butt later in the year when in terms of seeding. But I think the 49ers have an opportunity to get a huge win next week, which we can get into later in the episode against the Chiefs. Probably the game that a lot of people have circled on their calendars heading into this season as a Super Bowl rematch. But that was a big win for the 49ers, who desperately needed some kind of momentum. Got their first win on the road, by the way.
Yeah. Yeah, I don't know what else to add. Did you also see the other wide receiver trade that happened today?
I did not. I'm not gonna lie. We're recording here Tuesday night. I left work today, and I basically had to run over to another event. And yeah, so Amari Cooper. You're talking about
Yeah, I
Amari
was gonna
Cooper.
say that when you said Bills, I'm like, oh well, Bills got a heck of a lot better today.
Yes, the Bills got a heck of a lot better. I loved how that me talking about my day made me was how I was able to remind myself about Amari Cooper. But yes, huge trade for them. Amari Cooper was basically just a waste wasted talent in Cleveland, so they moved him to Buffalo. And Buffalo gets another really good wide receiver. And honestly, Buffalo's been good without a star wide receiver. And I'm not saying Amari Cooper is a star or anything. He's a great, eh, he's a really good wide receiver. I don't know if I would put him in the great category anymore. Maybe he'll be able to prove me wrong, but I do think he's a huge asset for Buffalo, though.
Yeah, the final trade was he Amari Cooper gets traded to the Buffalo Bills along with a 2026 7th-round pick in exchange for a 2025 3rd-round pick and a 2025 6th-round pick. And worth noting, we talked about this a couple episodes ago, but Bills had one of the few teams that had like little to no cap space, and Amari Cooper's contract the rest of the year is only $800,000 against their cap.
Oh,
So
dang. That's
so
a
they
deal.
were, because Cleveland restructured his contract earlier in this offseason.
That's a deal, man. Other events that went on this weekend. I don't know if there's really a lot of storylines with the games. There's been more storylines outside of the games really this weekend, in my opinion. Looking at the scores, Cardinals drop after a big win against the 49ers. They lay an egg against the Packers 34-13. Jordan Love, man, 254 yards, 58 yards, 4 touchdowns for the quarterback from Green Bay. And I mean, Green Bay still 4-2. They're up there in the NFC North. The NFC North is
It's
turned
insane.
out to be exactly what we expected, really, in competitiveness.
Right, because there's Minnesota that's sitting there at 5-0, and then
Bears
Detroit's
are 4-2.
4-1, Packers are 4-2, Bears are 4-2. It's nuts.
And a good win by the Bears against a very bad Jaguars team. And when I mean good win, they actually had a really good performance from their rookie quarterback that we've kind of been waiting for. 226 yards and 4 touchdowns from Caleb Williams. And I mean, we might as well just get right into it. That is your player of the week for the Sports Nerds podcast. Caleb Williams, like I mentioned, had over 220 yards passing and 4 touchdowns. What were your thoughts on his performance? Again, the Jaguars aren't that good, but is this still a good sign for the young quarterback?
Yeah, I think this is a huge step forward in Caleb's development. I mean, we saw the first basically 3 weeks of the season. Caleb Williams he wasn't playing great whatsoever, but these last few weeks, especially the game on Sunday against Jacksonville, he really showed me a lot. 23 of 29 for 226 yards, 4 touchdowns, and was able to scramble a little bit, had almost 60 yards on the ground. And if not for an underthrow to, I think it was Keenan Allen or DJ Moore, one of those two, he wouldn't have had the 1 interception that he threw. I think if you're a Bears fan, there's a lot of optimism with your quarterback right now, and especially with the way their schedule's heading. They have a competitive game on Sunday they have a bye week this week, excuse me. Their following game is at Washington, then at Arizona, home Patriots. I feel like 2 of those 3 games are very winnable games. And who knows? Sorry, I could be talking about the Commanders but no. Their schedule's it softens up. It doesn't really get super treacherous until like that Thanksgiving game against the Lions. So if you can go 4-1, 3-2 in those next few games, I mean,
dude, I'm telling you, when they hit the Packers, though, it goes November 17th, Packers.
It gets brutal.
Following week, Vikings at Detroit, at 49ers, at Vikings versus Lions, and then you kind of get a break with you hit that Packers mark. If you're not like, let's say they drop 2 of the 3 against the Commanders, Cardinals, or Patriots, you might as well just write off the season of going into the playoffs, because this back half of the stretch, if you can go 500 somehow, that's very lucky.
That's why you have to stack all your wins against teams like no offense, I keep pooping out Brock's Cardinals, but Cardinals and Patriots. And then I guess I don't think Seattle is as good as the record indicates. I think Seattle's gotten a little bit lucky thus far this season, so I think that's another winnable game for him, especially being at home. But no, to kind of sum up my thoughts, liked what I saw from Caleb. It's a step in the right direction, and yeah, Bears keep playing like this, they're gonna be tough later in the year.
Yeah, for sure. And I mean, you're talking about a really good quarterback performance from a rookie quarterback. Going from one rookie quarterback to another, the Commanders dropped the ball against the Ravens. 30-23 was the final score of that one. Jaden Daniels didn't play terrible. 269 yards, 2 touchdowns, only 22 yards on the ground. But it was more of Derrick Henry and Lamar Jackson just feasting for the Baltimore Ravens that got them the win.
Yeah, Washington's defense is going to be their Achilles heel.
Figure it out.
Them. Oh, sorry.
I think our Wi-Fi cut out.
Right. Yeah. I don't know what you were saying, but I just wanted to add Washington's defense is going to be their Achilles heel for them all year. Their defense cannot get stops. And granted, they're playing one of the best offenses in the league in Baltimore, so you can't really fault them that much.
But I feel like the Ravens are starting to figure out their offense.
Oh, for sure. You take away those first 2 games. Honestly, take away the second game against the Raiders. They've played well offensively in all of their games. It's just that one game against the Raiders, they really sold it down towards the end of the game. But yeah, Ravens have certainly turned around their season from what could have been a disastrous 0-2 start to now they're sitting at 4-2, I believe, top of the division. So
yeah. And really, outside of that and that game, other notable scores. I mean, the Chargers 23-16 against the Broncos. Not a huge game to really talk about, just a close game. Colts got a close game against the Titans. Colts and Titans are kind of just middle of the pack teams, really. I don't expect either of them to make the playoffs this year. But then you get into the Lions absolutely destroying the Dallas Cowboys. Cowboys didn't even score a touchdown. They got 3 field goals, and the Lions put up 47. This was a unbelievable performance. And when we get to our power rankings, you've made a point to emphasize how good of a performance this was from the Detroit Lions. Goff had 315 yards, 3 touchdowns. David Montgomery, I don't think gets enough credit for what he does or what he has done in the NFL. He got an extension, I think 10.5 of his 18 mil is guaranteed in his 2-year extension, which I think he still has 2 years on his current deal. So he's there for another 4 years in Detroit. And Detroit knows if they're inside the 20, inside the 15, or even if you're inside the 5 and you're not giving it to David Montgomery 3 times out of those 4 plays, you're kind of messing up. And he got 2 touchdowns for the Lions last weekend. What were your thoughts on this absolute beatdown in Dallas?
I think the Lions wanted to make a point from last year's game against Dallas. I don't know if you remember, but there was the flag that the refs threw because Dan Skipper didn't report as eligible in that game, and Lions felt like they should have won that game. Probably should have won that game. Who knows? Can't go back in time and change that. But I think this was the Lions' way of showing we have the prime time slot in this Sunday's games. We're gonna make the Cowboys look like fools in their own stadium, and boy, did they! 47 points. You don't even with the NFL now. You don't really see 47-point games anymore with how good the defenses have gotten. But for the Lions to go out there and Goff had 3 passing touchdowns. You got Montgomery, you got 2 rushing touchdowns. You got Penei Sewell getting hook and laterals, almost touchdowns. Like, dude, these Lions, I'm sure we'll get into it later, but they had a huge injury loss on the defensive side.
I was going to ask you about that. How much of a loss? Obviously, we're talking about Aiden Hutchinson, who I'm pretty sure he broke his tibia.
Yeah, it's not good.
I didn't see the actual clip of the play. I just saw the video of him zoomed in, and he's like, "I broke it." I don't know what he was talking about, but it didn't look good just from that clip. So I prefer not watching it. I've seen my fair share of some nasty injuries. So, how big of an impact is losing Aiden Hutchinson for the Lions? Because honestly, I think I picked him heading into this season as the defensive player of the year. And I think he was on track to at least be in contention for that. He's first in sacks right now at 7.5. But of course he gets hurt. My luck. And honestly, Detroit's luck. I feel like that's just a Lions thing to happen. But what are your thoughts on this injury? Is it huge? I guess, is it a big deal? Is it a biggie, no biggie, or kind of an iffy?
It is a catastrophic injury for the Lions. There's a stat out there. I should have screenshotted it from Twitter, but basically Aiden Hutchinson was he had, like you said, he had 7.5 sacks after Sunday. The Lions, the rest of the team, I think had 6 or 7 sacks and only generated pressure on 12% of dropbacks when Hutchinson was generating pressure on almost 24%, which, if that doesn't show you how dominant he was thus far this season, I don't know what will. I would expect the Lions to be in the trade market now for a veteran pass rusher. Who knows what's going on with Hassan Reddick and the Jets? Sounds like a contract's not going to get done anytime soon. Watch out for Vegas. If they're a dumpster fire the rest of the year, maybe Mad Max Crosby goes back to Michigan. Who knows? Lions got a lot of options right now. Heck, if you really want to get aggressive, if you're the Lions, call up Cleveland, see what they want for Myles Garrett. Like, the Lions got to get some pass rush on that side of the ball. Otherwise, that defense is going to be the Achilles heel of this team.
Yeah, that was just a huge loss for them. And you feel bad because Aiden Hutchinson, I don't think there's anything that he's ever done that's ever upset people outside of just maybe his play dominating against other teams. So, like, when you see a good guy go down, it's just rough to see because, he's kind of a fan favorite, I feel like, in the NFL as a whole. So him going down is a huge loss for not only the NFL, but the Lions as well.
Oh, yeah, and I wish I didn't have to watch that injury live, but that injury was gut-wrenching. It was not good to watch. And then they showed
I'm kind of happy I didn't see it.
Yeah. But he will not be playing football until next year. But just put it that way.
Just unfortunate for a team that is just rolling right now in the NFL. The last 2 games really that I want to hit on, and then if you have any that you want to talk on, we can as well. But the Eagles get a close win against the Browns, 20-16. Obviously, the Browns moved on from Amari Cooper this afternoon and sent him to Buffalo. I think even their coaching staff is reassured that Deshaun Watson is still the starter. this move, I think it's time to officially say that this Deshaun Watson move is the worst move in NFL history.
You know what's so crazy is I would 1000% be on board with that take. If not for the Bryce Young trade, I think we have the two worst trades in the NFL right now acting at the same time. Because you have the Bryce Young trade, which resulted the Bears getting Caleb, DJ Moore, Darnell Wright, and 2 more second-round picks that haven't even been selected yet. And then you have the Deshaun Watson trade, which the Texans didn't really get. I mean, I'd have to pull up who they got picks, like, with their picks. But that fully guaranteed $240 million contract, like, was not good whatsoever. And the Browns are out 3 at first-round picks, I believe.
Yeah, I guess let me rephrase it. I don't know if it's the worst trade. It's the worst contract of all time.
Okay, yeah. Wow. That trade helped the Texans get Will Anderson, and we know how dominant Will Anderson is. Because I think the Texans used one of those picks to jump up with the Cardinals and get Will Anderson.
Yep.
Or something like that. But
yeah, it's been rough for the Browns. They just need to move on from him. I'm sorry, just pay the bill. Just do it.
The bill is.
It's going to get worse before it gets better.
After the season, the bill is $172 million.
Dude, I'm sorry, but like, it's going to get worse before it gets better. Either way, you're either going to suffer for longer, or you can just bite the bullet, release him now, and at least maybe you get a rebuild that actually turns it around of some sort. I know you still have to pay the bill, but still, sometimes paying the bill is better than dealing with the player.
Oh boy. He is currently leading. He's bottom in the league in QBR at 21 points.
And we are not shocked.
I've said this many times. All right, this might go to passer rating, but if you literally snap the ball and throw it into the ground, you get like a 38 pass or QBR. And
that's how bad he is.
At 27. So
that's how
I think that tells you all that needs to be said.
He's terrible. He's terrible. Bench him, please. Make Brown fans
Jameson
happy,
please.
And put Jameson Winston in. Jameson. I can't even speak. That's how mad I am on Deshaun Watson. Put in Jameis Winston, please. For the love of God. You'll actually may get more fans to show up to your dang games. Because right now, by the end of the season, nobody's going to be showing up in Cleveland. I know that they are probably one of the most loyal fans in the NFL, and people that don't follow the NFL as closely probably don't understand what I mean by how loyal these Cleveland fans are, because these Cleveland fans have been through some crap and they still show up to games week after week. But this might be the breaking point. Like this might be it, because they have put too much into this quarterback, and sometimes you just need to accept that it's a failure and move on, because he is not fit for the NFL as a quarterback anymore.
No, and I think if I could be wrong. I'm double checking right now, but if the draft ended today, do you know who would hold the number 1 pick?
Cleveland.
The Cleveland Browns.
Too bad
there isn't. Not even the Carolina Panthers would hold that number 1 pick right now.
But I'm telling you, they won't. I guarantee you, they won't draft a quarterback. They would probably take Travis Hunter. Honestly, man. I know Travis Hunter got hurt last weekend, but still.
It's too early to talk about draft. Draft season for me is anytime after the Super Bowl. Then I get it invested in the draft. But
well, yeah, because you're always competing for a Super Bowl. Some of us don't get the luxury of that on a yearly basis. But the final game I want to talk about, and this gets into my player of the week, Tampa Bay cooked the Saints, who were cooking earlier in the year. 51. You were talking about how hard it is to get 40.
Yeah.
51 from the Buccaneers, with 4 passing touchdowns from Baker Mayfield. And a lot of people may be like, oh, Brock, you're really going to put Baker Mayfield as your player of the week with 3 interceptions? Actually, no, he is not my player of the week. It actually is Chris Godwin, who I honestly think people forget how good Chris Godwin actually is, because Mike Evans is there, and Mike Evans is unbelievable, but Chris Godwin is good for, honestly, 8 really good games a year. And then the rest of the season, he's about I feel like that's a little rude on Chris Godwin. He's just really good and consistently putting up numbers, sometimes exceeding the numbers that maybe people are expecting him to get. 11 receptions for 125 yards last weekend against the Saints and 2 tutties for Chris Godwin, my player of the week for the sports nerds. So Dawson earlier picked Caleb Williams, and I went with Chris Godwin. Let's get into our power rankings. Let's see if I can.
Whoa. You're going to gloss over the fact that Brock's boys started this week for the Saints? I figured you were going to talk about Rattler.
No. I wasn't going to. I don't want to talk.
Oh, man. He didn't. Okay.
The QBR is not helping.
No, the QBR isn't. Neither is the pass rating. But they were up in this game, and this was a semi-close game in the third quarter, right? Yeah. It was 31 to 27
points in the fourth quarter from Tampa Bay. New Orleans, by the way, scored all their points in the second quarter. They scored all 27 in the second quarter.
Wow. Did not know that.
Yeah. So it sounds like Spencer Rattler's like career kind of just all in at one point, and then no one cared about him after that, which kind of unfortunate. I thought he played actually decent for the situation he was kind of put in, being like, hey, you're going to just be the starter for this week because Derek Carr's hurt. Do you know what the extent of that injury is?
Let me look.
But he had 243 yards, 1 touchdown, but 2 interceptions, and he was sacked 5 times. So a little bit of a rough start for the rookie quarterback, but I think he showed some strides that he could actually maybe compete for a job.
Looks like Carr didn't practice today as we're recording, which is typically not a great sign if he wants to play this Sunday. So maybe we get Rattler. Maybe Rattler gets another start under his belt. And
they play the Broncos, so it's a good chance to...
Oh, that's the Thursday. Ew, that's a gross Thursday game.
Everybody get your Spencer Rattler jerseys before Thursday. Come on now.
That's gross.
But yeah, not so perfect first performance by him, but I mean, it could be worse. I've seen worse in terms of rookie first starts. But that's pretty much it for games. Anything you want to hit on before we get into rankings?
So Pittsburgh got a blowout win. I mean,
and we're going to talk about Pittsburgh because I heard some things about this week, and that's a little concerning to me. But let's get into our rankings real quick, if you don't mind. This was last week's rankings, if I remember right. Yep, last week for Dawson, he had Kansas City at number 1, Minnesota at number 2, Houston at 3, Detroit at 4, and Baltimore at 5. And I'm hoping, because I did this in speed run, because again, I was running everywhere this afternoon, that I got these exactly the way you sent me them. But here are Dawson's picks for the power rankings this week.
Those all look correct.
Yes. Nailed it.
Yeah, I mean, I'm not going to... This might show a little bias, but unless Kansas City loses a game or they lose a huge player on offense or defense, they're going to stay number 1 for me. Detroit. After that performance, I wasn't going to move Minnesota down because, granted, they didn't play. I wasn't going to penalize them. You scoring 47, you got to go up. You got to go up to number 2. That was an insane performance. Now, the loss to Hutchinson, that is going to hurt this team a lot. He was one of the leaders on that team. He was arguably the best defensive player, arguably the best player on that team, if you want to go that far. And him being out for presumably the rest of the year is going to really hurt. Who knows? Let's see if they add someone at the deadline, some more pass rush. Minnesota, again, didn't play last week, so can't really fault them too much. They're still 5-0, still looked pretty good. Still on the lookout for Sam Darnold Pumpkin Watch, so be on the lookout for that. Texans, I mean, I didn't really watch the Patriots game too much. I just kept seeing the score updates. They won 41-21. Cool. They played the Patriots, so you're not going to get too much credit from me. But yeah, Texans move up there, number 4 on my power rankings. Baltimore, with the close win over Washington, they're now 4-2 on the year. Lamar's really figuring out. Derrick Henry, who I thought would take a step back this year, I will eat my words on that. He looks better than ever right now. I think he's first in the NFL in carries, first in yards, and first in rushing touchdowns, which is insane. So shout out to Baltimore. I think Baltimore's still got a defensive problem. I think they still are struggling on defense quite a bit. But, man, this offense is really starting to come along. It's really starting to click. So, yeah, those are my power rankings for week 6 going into week 7 of the NFL season.
Yeah, for those watching or listening to our podcast, audio only, Dawson has Kansas City at 1, Detroit at 2, Minnesota at 3, Houston at 4, and Baltimore at 5. Let's get into mine. Last week, I made a move by having Washington at number 3, and I can tell you that Washington did not make my top 5 this week. Kansas City at 1, Minnesota at 2, Washington at 3, Houston at 4, and Atlanta at 5. This week, honestly, not a huge movement, except that one team shot up in my rankings. The only move really for me is Washington goes out and Detroit moves up to 3. So Kansas City at 1. I mean, you can't move them until they lose, and depending on how they lose and who they lose to, there's a good chance that they may still stay at number 1 after their first loss in the year. Minnesota hasn't lost yet, so I can't move them yet. And the fact that it was a bye week, I can't jump them that far. I mean, I can't penalize them for that. Detroit moves up to 3. I mean, I think my record might be wrong on theirs. No, I think it's right.
No, they had the first bye week.
I forgot about that.
So they're 4-1.
So Detroit's 4-1. Loss of Aiden Hutchinson is going to hurt. They may drop out depending on how their first performance is without him. But at the same time, I feel like their offense can keep them in a lot of games. So I think that they're still a top 5 team. Houston at 4. I mean, they've been at 4 for a while for both of us. It seems like they've just kind of stuck in the 4 or 5 area. They beat the Patriots. Whoopee. Drake May had more passing yards, though, than C.J. Stroud. I would like to point that out. Atlanta stays at 5. I mean, they didn't lose to Carolina, so I can't move them out yet. I thought about putting Tampa Bay in, but I feel like that's a bit of a stretch to do that after Atlanta still beat them a couple weeks ago. So I'm going to put Atlanta at 5 for my power rankings. Dawson, I mean, we got to talk about something, man. Are you a I guess let me set this up. It finally is happening to me. I will be missing noon football on Sunday for an event that a lot of men don't want to go and do in the middle of fall.
Pumpkin patch. Is that right?
I think so. Nothing has been set in stone, but I have been told that I will be going to
Through
a
the rumor
pumpkin
mill.
patch with a bunch of her friends. But get yourself a girl that loves football as much as you, because she's a Kansas City fan and San Francisco fan. She loves Brock Purdy. So we're not missing out on that game. And it wasn't even my idea. So I might have to miss out on the noon slate of football games, but
Ooh. I mean, there aren't really any crazy good ones. I mean, Detroit, Minnesota is probably the best one I'm seeing right now. Houston, Green Bay is another really good one. But that's really it.
But honestly, the only game I care about is San Francisco and Kansas City in the afternoon. And when I was told, because this is kind of a told situation, we were like, okay, whatever. I don't need to watch football for a weekend. And then we literally, I think an hour or so after, we saw the ad for Kansas City and San Francisco and what time it was. And we just both looked at each other and we're like, yeah, we're not missing that. So
can't.
Pumpkin patch. I can deal with the pumpkin patch as long as I don't miss the marquee matchup of the weekend. So,
and worst comes to worst, there's YouTube TV on the phone. Like, you can just keep glancing.
I feel like I'd be a terrible person if I did that, because her friends aren't sports people. I think they refer to it as sporty ball. So
yeah, probably wouldn't go over well.
Yeah, and it's all her friends. So trying to make good impression yeah, shout out Sarah and her friends. Can't wait. Hopefully it's not like freezing out. I don't know what Sunday is going to look like, but as long as I get to watch the 49ers and Chiefs, I won't complain. There's a good chance I might wear my Purdy jersey. I don't know. I'll see what I'm told. because again, that's an event
Yeah.
that the male is told what to do.
Mhm.
But yeah, just wanted to let you know that
Oh yeah.
it finally happened to me because I feel like it happens at one point.
Oh yeah.
So, but yeah, I mean, the only other thing that I wanted to talk about outside of that Kansas City game this week with the 49ers is the rumors of the Steelers potentially playing two quarterbacks this weekend with Russell Wilson potentially being healthy. I don't know if you've seen this.
I have, and I absolutely hate it.
Why though? Like you are 4-2 right now, and Justin Fields hasn't played that bad at all.
Steelers, what are we doing?
Mike Tomlin, I am a big fan of yours, but if you do this, I might start getting on the bandwagon of okay, maybe your time in Pittsburgh needs to like be reconsidered. You're a great coach, but if you're going to just be mid and you're doing these decisions when you actually have a quarterback that's actually somewhat decent, maybe you should move on.
See, I know there's the comparison out there all the time of Iowa and Pittsburgh, how they're the same defense, blah, blah, blah. See, one thing I will tell you about Kirk Ferentz, though, is Kirk Ferentz, other than Rudock and Beathard, 9 years ago now, Kirk Ferentz has not played two quarterbacks. That man is stubborn. He picks his quarterback and he sticks to it. And unless there's an injury or a
I mean,
suspension,
he played Joey Labus against Ohio State.
when the game's not a blowout is what I mean. Like, you don't hear about Kirk might change quarterbacks this week. Kirk will stick to his guy and then prove to you why he stuck to his guy. And then all I need to show is the freaking Citrus Bowl where Marco Lanius couldn't throw a 5-yard slant the entire game.
Is Iowa on a bye this week?
No, we play at Michigan State this week.
I will die if somehow Brandon Sullivan is the starter. I know he won't, but like hypothetically, if like first snap Brandon Sullivan is under center, I'm gonna die. Just because you're like Kurt never does that, but
He doesn't, bro. Literally only this year with Sullivan and McNamara and Beathard and Rudock is the only time I can ever remember Kurt doing this.
but like the reason I
Doesn't
wanted
make
to bring
sense
this
for
up is
Pittsburgh.
because I'm someone that like I feel like has been really high on the Steelers since even before the season started compared to most people. And it was because of Justin Fields, not because of Russell Wilson. If you're playing Russell Wilson, dude, I'm sorry, you're not going to win many games. And that's just how it's going to be. So we'll see what happens there. I think this is going to be a little bit shorter of a show because honestly, the games last week weren't like super interesting. You want to get in our top 5 list that has nothing to do with necessarily the NFL going on or the NFL world currently, just kind of
Our top
whatever.
5 random list.
Yeah, top 5 random list. This week we are doing I think top 5 sporting events that we witnessed in person. So we'll start off, of course, with Dawson's list. We have one in common, obviously, and it's the number 5 spot that you have.
Yeah, I mean, me and Brock had this on our list for a reason. Me and Brock actually went to the Final Four back. It's almost 5 years ago, which is insane. Does not feel like that long ago. That game, Virginia Auburn. I don't know if a lot of people remember how that game ended, but everyone thought Auburn was winning. And then Kyle Guy comes down, gets fouled on the 3-pointer, makes all 3 free throws, ends up going up by 1. Like, the whole place was going insane. Plus, seeing a basketball game inside of a football arena was a surreal experience. So for that reason, it had to go at number 5 for me.
We were at section 300 something.
Oh man, we were up in the Jesus seats.
And like
still a blast.
There were Auburn fans celebrating because they thought they won, and all of a sudden Virginia's going to the free throw line. We're like, what is going on?
Well, if you remember, it was so loud in the stadium, no one heard the ref's whistle. So every Auburn fan, again, thought the game was over. And then, like you said, everyone was walking to like the free throw line, thinking it's a free throw, and all of us are just standing here like, did they actually call a foul on that 3-pointer? And then, sure enough, gets fouled. Kyle Guy hits all 3 free throws. Or Virginia goes up by 1, and the rest is history. Virginia went on to win the Natty that year, which is kind of crazy.
For sure, I'm still mad that Duke decided to lose in the Elite Eight.
I would have loved to seen Zion play, bro. But what do you do?
Number 4.
This, I think, is not arguably. This is the greatest Cyhawk game ever when it comes to like preseason implications. Both teams were ranked in the top 10 at the time. College game day was in Ames. And I, as an Iowa fan, I love going to Jack Trice when people are booing me. I think that's cool. I like going to opposing team stadiums. I love the boos. Yeah, this game was really awesome. For me. I can't really say the same for Brock, but
Shut up.
yeah, I think I ended up winning 31-20 in this game, and that was Iowa's brief stint where they were like the number 2 team in the country, and haven't been close to that since. But
I was shocked that this was the Cyhawk game that you included.
The 2017 one was really close because that was the 44-41 overtime Akram Wadley Superman game.
That's why I was so confused why that one was on here. But then you reminded me of the preseason implications. College game day came back for a second run in Ames. So it made more sense as I started thinking.
Right. And that 2017 game I also went to, and that game was unbelievable. It looked like
and you were in the end zone club.
I
still haven't ever been in there.
I was in the end zone club. I was in the end zone that Amir Smith-Marset caught the game-winning touchdown in overtime, which was surreal. And that game, it's hard to believe, was already 7 years ago, which is, again, time flies by for no reason. But yeah, that's my number 4 slot. I mean, any Iowa fan is going to agree with me on this if you're at this game. Maybe not at 3. Maybe some people have this at 2 or 1, but 2 or 1, you'll understand why. Number 3, I have Iowa versus Ohio State in 2017. This was a game that if you're an Iowa fan, no one was picking Iowa to win this game. I think they were like a 27-point underdog against Ohio State. Ohio State at the time had JT Barrett, who was one of the best quarterbacks in the country. They had Nick Bosa, who was amazing. Chase Young was on that team as well. And Iowa, from the first play of the game, absolutely demolished Ohio State 55-24, which running the field was a crazy experience. Don't know how many times they're going to do that in the future now, but yeah.
Is that the only time you've ever rushed the field?
No, the number 2, I also rushed the field. And number 2 is Iowa Penn State. This was one of my favorite games ever. I mean, Iowa was number 4.
This game was so boring.
It was a boring game, but I will always and forever remember Petrus to Reganey for a 40-yard touchdown with 6 minutes left. Like, that was just unreal. It was the loudest I think Kinnick's ever gotten. Kinnick's got 3 straight false start penalties, and it backed up Penn State all the way to the 1-yard line in their own end zone, which I think I'll never forget. And then rushing the field afterwards was just unreal and a crazy experience. I think, Brock, have you rushed the field before? Like when Once. It was Iowa, was it TCU?
I didn't rush the field for that. I rushed the field for Brock Purdy's first start at Jack Trice Stadium versus West Virginia.
Okay, gotcha. But in West Virginia was like 7 or 8. Were they top?
Yeah, they were top 10. I think they were undefeated at the time. I think they just beat Texas the week before or something like that.
Yeah, but running the field is insane. It's a crazy experience. It always takes like an hour to get out of the stadium after you rush the field because everyone's got to crawl back and go up through. But yeah, for those reasons, Iowa Penn State, it's got to be number 2 for me. Number 1, to this day, I will die with this on my grave. This was the most unreal game I think I've ever been to. This was, funny enough, it was me and my dad have been to plenty of Chiefs games over the years, but it was my mom's first ever Chiefs game. And when Kansas City went down 24-0, she looked at me and my dad and said, "Hey, do you want to leave?" And I didn't want to say that I wanted to leave, but man, I wasn't having a whole lot of fun at the game. And then sure enough, Kansas City scores 28 in the second quarter to go up at half. Kansas City, I think, ends up beating them 51-31, I think, or 34, something like that.
Was this the game they ran out of fireworks?
Yep, they ran out of fireworks in the fourth quarter. I mean, just the energy in Arrowhead for that game was unreal. I mean, this was basically the birth of Mahomes really in the playoffs and all of his playoff memories. They went on to win the Super Bowl that year. And yeah, that was one of the most insane. That was the most insane game I've ever been to. And so that's my list.
So my list was really hard, and I'm not going to lie, like this top 5 is very very fluid, and at the same time there's games that I didn't even mention on here that I easily could put in my top 5. Being that I've been to so many Iowa State games. And so I just went with the top 5 that just came to my mind first. Obviously, I have to put the Final Four game at number 5 as well. It's never going to be in the top 4 for me. It's just one of those things where it's like it was a really good Final Four game, so I have to include it, being that it was in a football stadium and everything, and not many people get to experience that. It's a really fun time to do that if you ever get the chance to. But Virginia Auburn at number 5 and 20 for me, the 2019 Final Four game. Number 4. Not many people are going to know what I'm talking about with this game. Iowa State versus Texas in 2023. Men's basketball in Ames. A lot of things were going down with this. Iowa State, obviously, second year with TJ Otzelberger, and they're, just kind of rolling like they normally do. Basically, what they've done the last, since TJ has shown up, has overachieved on everything. The big storyline, though, was Tyrese Hunter, who was a freshman at Iowa State, transferred to Texas. And I'm telling you, when I say this was one of the most toxic environments I've ever been into or been to for a college game, I was working this game. I'm pretty sure. I don't even think I was a fan. And I could already tell that this was going to be a situation that, no, I did work this one. It was another, I worked the Texas game last year, but Caleb Grill, who didn't leave Iowa State on a good note, off the court wise, but was just talking trash the entire game, and then hits this 3. Dude, the crowd, I've heard Hilton get loud. It is one of the loudest I've ever heard Hilton get. And the best part is, and the image is kind of small, but if you look closely, Caleb is telling the team to call a timeout. He's telling Texas to call a timeout after he hit that 3. And it's one of the most iconic videos in Iowa State history, always will be. It's one of those things where I know it didn't end well with Caleb and Iowa State, their relationship, but I felt like if he did come back to Iowa State, not many, just as like a fan or whatever that in the future, I feel like Iowa State fans would still welcome back with open arms. But that play right there is one of the most like clutch, hilarious, trash talking plays you'll ever see in basketball. And being that it was from Caleb Grill just made it even better. Iowa State versus Michigan and basketball in 2013 for me is number 3. This is for many, many, many reasons. One of those is I feel like this game was the establishment of the Hoiberg era, being like, we're here. We're actually going to not only be competitive, but we're going to be a ranked team consistently, competing for Big 12 championships, Sweet 16 appearances, whatever. This Iowa State team also was the team with DeAndre Kane, Melvin Edgem. The list goes on. Niang was in his sophomore year. Sophomore year. This was just an unbelievable team, and this was the game that like they really needed to jumpstart where they ended up being with the Big 12 titles and the Sweet 16 appearances, losing to UConn, who ultimately won the championship that year with Shabazz Napier, which I will go to my grave on. If George Niang didn't break his foot, that game would have went in a different way. But Iowa State versus Michigan 2013 was just electric. The amount of times I heard insert explicit word McGarry, because Mitch McGarry was the center for Michigan.
Oh my god!
Nick Stauskas was on that team. It was a stacked Michigan team.
That was a crazy.
That photo on our graphic, that's Johnny Orr, who is considered Iowa State's best college basketball coach of all time. I mean, it's probably debatable depending on who you are and which generation you grew up in. That was the last time he actually ever ended up in Hilton. He walked out with Hoiberg, who Hoiberg was one of his players when he was coaching at Iowa State. He later passed away a month later or a few weeks later. So it was one of those things where it's like, now that makes it even more of a special moment because the whole crowd erupted when Johnny came out. One of the best coaches Iowa State or college basketball has seen. And he also coached at Michigan, which made it even a bigger deal and a kind of sweet moment for him and for Iowa State and Michigan fans. Number 2, you mentioned this game earlier, Iowa State versus TCU. I mentioned how Iowa State versus Michigan was like the establishment of like, we're here. Some people we'll probably say the Iowa State Oklahoma game where Kyle Kemp just came out of nowhere and showed up and won the game for Iowa State with that amazing pass to Alan Lazard in Norman was the establishment of we're here to compete. This game, in my opinion, really was, because it was just kind of like, oh, they keep kind of sneaking away with upset victories, but can they ever can they really get just a dominant win? And the score was not that impressive. You talked about the Penn State game. I got to find the final score of this. The final score was 14-7, but Iowa State dominated the entire game. Really, the defense was just unbelievable. There was a play where their quarterback was getting taken down. His name was Kenny Hill. Do you remember him? He was at Texas
Oh
A&M.
man,
Yeah.
yep.
And so he was getting sacked, and all of a sudden, one of our defensive linemen landed on him to where he fumbled the ball. So everybody thought it was just a sack, and then all of a sudden, all of our players are pointing the way of our possession, and it was like, oh my gosh, we got the ball. And then obviously that photo right there is Marcel Spears picking it off after we punted it, because we punted the ball with a minute or so left. And I'm not going to lie, you could feel it in the stadium. All Iowa State fans were like, oh, here we go again. Iowa State in a one possession lead in the fourth quarter against a ranked team, just punting the ball away. The ball's around the 50, 40-yard line, depending on where the ball was actually spotted. I can't remember for sure. TCU is going to find a way to tie this. We'll go to overtime. We'll lose this one. And then a couple plays later, Marcel Spears comes up with an amazing pick, just sniping it from the receiver and getting the win. So that game, in my opinion, is what really established Matt Campbell's program as a whole. Of course, the Oklahoma game is the one a lot of people talk about. This was the one that was like, we're here to stay. We're not here to just win a couple ranked games every once in a while. We're here to actually compete. And then number one, I had to bring an Iowa State game into it. And I feel like anybody that was at this game that's an Iowa State fan, if it's not in your top five, you need to rewatch it. Iowa State versus Iowa in 2011, triple overtime, was another high-scoring affair. I got to look up the final score.
44-41.
Was it the same exact score as that
It was
2017 game? That's hilarious. I'm not going to lie. Both overtime games, I think, have been triple overtimes. Or was the other one double? I think that other one was
I thought the other
double.
one was just double or single.
I think that one was double, if I remember right. But Iowa State versus Iowa, that game was unbelievable. That was my first Cyhawk game, so obviously it was single. Oh wow!
Yeah.
But this game, it was just so fun. It was hot. Oh my gosh! I think it was 99 degrees out. At least it felt like it. That when we took Grandma Jenny to the game, and she's a little shorter. Everybody's standing in the fourth quarter in overtime. She has no idea what's going on, and we score the game-winning touchdown. She's like, "Did we win?" She's trying to look over as everybody's rushing the field. It's such a special moment. And Steele Jant's legacy game, man. Steele Jant's is one of the best names in sports history. That's another list that we need to do, is top 5 favorite names of sports or something like that. But yeah, Iowa State 2011 was my third Iowa State game I've ever been to. First ever Iowa State game. And no Iowa State game has ever compared to that in terms of me being there in person. This year, of course, was a little special, but I wasn't there for that. So almost was. Tried to convince people, but I think we're saving money for cheaper tickets at Arrowhead in a couple weeks, because Kansas is now 1-6 or 1-5. So
that's a team that was preseason ranked top 15 and was reverted back to Kansas football ways.
It makes me feel better about the 2021 Iowa State football season, where they were ranked 7 going into the year, and then they were just average. They weren't terrible, but again, they made a bowl game. Kansas is one game away from having to win out, because they are 1-5 right now. So
crazy.
But anything else you want to talk about before we sign off?
No, this is probably my favorite time of the year. I mean, for sports, you got the NBA getting ready to tip off next Tuesday. Is that right?
Yep. And we'll be recording a preseason prediction show with the Hardwood Convos tomorrow night. That will probably be posted around Friday-ish. And then also be on the lookout for a 515 Sports podcast. We were gone last week. We still released our picks of the week. another 5-0 week for me. I think I've done it 2 or 3 times now this year.
Yes, sir.
But
Got some crazy games this weekend too.
yeah, it's gonna be hard to predict. I'm not gonna lie. Dude, did you? Oh, we didn't even talk about this, and we talk about this all the time. We got 5 minutes, but I'm gonna pull this up. Did you see the new unis that dropped for Iowa State?
Were they the white ones? No.
For basketball?
Oh, I think I may have on Twitter, but
Let's see if I can.
you might need to pull them up again. So
Yeah.
are they the cursive script ones?
No. This is new. Like
Okay, then I
today.
definitely haven't seen it. No.
Okay. Let's see if I can share screen. I'm pulling it up on Cyclone Fanatic, which I mean they just quote tweet, but I'll try to keep the audio off. But they're trying to do a throwback look. So we'll get through the highlights here and then I'll go to the jerseys. But like the Hoiberg era is what they're kind of looking for, and so, dude, I'm telling you, these jerseys are sick.
Yo, those are clean.
They're way better than what Iowa State has had in a long time.
Those are clean. I like those.
And I never thought red and yellow could look good with as an accent or a stroke around the cardinal, but it looks really good. I like it. I do like that they put the little
sigh.
Yeah, they can say it's a cardinal. It looks like a chicken. I'm not gonna lie. It looks like a chicken, but it's cool looking. But
yeah,
dude, these are my favorite Iowa State unis that I've ever seen.
Are they just alternates that they wear at home, or are they permanent home unis?
They've been pushing that running side for a while now. I think that might be their actual like
home
unis, which sign me up. I just want to see that running side or the basketball side in the middle of a center court for a game.
Mm-hmm.
Ooh, sign me up for that. They've been pushing that recently, and it's been great. Can we get Bird in the Blender back though? Give me back that logo.
Did you see the Arkansas center court with the old?
That looked cool.
That's insane. I love that.
That was awesome, bro. That dude. Sometimes I wonder why like some teams go away from something, because like I saw that. Let's see if I can pull it up here. We got like a minute and a half or so, but like it looks way cooler than their current logo.
Yeah.
Where's it at? How long ago was that? Oh, here.
That they released it like a week ago.
Here we go. Like, look at this. That's just so cool. Give me that any day. Give me the old logos any day over the current logos in all of sports, really.
Mm-hmm. Like mid 90s, I think. Greatest time.
Sorry about that.
There you go. For logos, for jerseys, for I don't know, dude. That's like peak NFL, NBA. Like for me, when you rank uniforms, if you don't have some 90s uniforms or early 2000s, I don't know. Your list is invalid to me.
Amen. Well, we'll be back next week with another episode. Make sure to like, subscribe, follow us wherever you get your podcasts or listen to us. You can find us on Apple Podcasts and Spotify and SoundCloud, as well as YouTube, Facebook, and Twitter for our live streams, Instagram for all of our graphics and stuff that we post here, as well as Twitter and Facebook at 515 Podcast. For Dawson Livingston, I'm Brock Bierman. We'll be back later this week with a Hardwood Convos episode, as well as a episode of the 515 Sports Podcast with me and Chase Winterbore. But enjoy the NFL games. I'll enjoy the pumpkin patch. But we'll see everybody next week for some more NFL talk here on the Sports Nerds.